from Rachel Reeves standing up in Oxford, I think it is, to tell us exactly how she plans to get growth going into the UK economy. She keeps talking about it, she keeps mentioning the word, she keeps saying it, she keeps alluding to it, but does she really know actually how to do it? Let's talk to Liam Halligan, a man who knows a thing or two about the economy, Telegraph columnist, of course, podcaster, very, very, I would say, serious economist, unlike Rachel Reeves, who continues, he says that she's an economist, but nobody's quite sure. Liam, good to see you. Thank you. Welcome to the show. She talks a good game, Rachel Reeves, but I mean, most of what she says doesn't appear to have any really substance to it or resonance, does it?
Well, the thing is, Mike, Labour came into office in July. They spent a lot of time talking down the UK economy, talking about a black hole that they were supposed to have not seen in opposition, even though everyone else knew that the state of the public finances. You didn't have to be the Institute for Fiscal Studies to know the state of the public finances. Labour did that because they wanted to justify tax rises that they didn't talk about in their manifesto, because they knew people would have voted against them. That had a really serious impact on business and consumer sentiment. It's all very well slagging off the UK economy when you're in opposition, but when you're in government, it really matters. And then on top of that, Labour said they wanted to fix the public finances in that Halloween, October the 31st budget. Yeah. They created the public finances because they killed growth stone dead. Yeah. Last 3 months that we got figures for, here are the growth numbers for the UK: minus 0.1, minus 0.1, plus 0.1 under Labour. When you have growth figures like that, you're not fixing the public finances, you're destroying the public finances, because the markets can see the economy is not going to grow. Your budget measures are going to hinder growth because you're whacking 40 billion quid of extra taxation on the economy as a whole. That's the equivalent, Mike, of more than 5p on the basic rate of income tax. Right. Massive. And when you're not growing, that means you get less tax revenue. That means you need more support for the economy. There's more unemployment. It tears the public finances apart. And that's why nerds like me keep going on about these gilt yields. What's a gilt yield? A gilt yield is the cost to the government of borrowing. And the cost to the government of borrowing now is way higher than it was at the peak of the so-called panic over Liz Truss's mini budget. We're now spending more, Mike, on debt interest a year than we spend on education. Think of the morality of that. Yeah. That's less money for public services because the government's spending upward of 100 billion quid a year now on debt interest. It's not paying back the debt, it's just servicing the debt, paying the interest on the debt, often to creditors, investors overseas. This is a mad way to run the economy. If you want to get growth going, you need to lower the tax burden. You need to strip away more onerous regulation. You got to let the British economy fly. Yeah. And there's no one at the top of the Labour Party who's got the courage or the ideological nous to let that happen. However many times they say the word growth in interviews.
Yes, because it seems to me that they believe that growth comes only from one place, and that is from central government, that only they can kind of create businesses, only they can create jobs. Clearly incorrect on all counts, really. But the thing that I don't understand, and maybe you can explain it to me, because I'm, you know, like most people, relatively, you know, inexperienced about economics, right? Even though I did a degree in it, I still can't work it out. At the end of the day, they borrowed 17.8 billion pounds in December alone, right? Now, if they've got a £22 billion black hole, they've practically doubled it. What are they doing with the money?
Exactly. They're borrowing huge amounts each month. About 5 or 6 billion of that 17 billion they borrowed in December alone, Mike, wait for it, they're spending on debt interest payments. Right. So they're borrowing money to spend on servicing existing debt. This is turning into a Ponzi scheme. Right. On top of that, the markets can see, traders can see that when you give the train drivers a 15% pay rise, right, which they did on coming into office, and then the train drivers say thank you very much and then come back for even more, which they now are, they can see the trade unions have got Labour on the run. They can see that Labour haven't got anyone at the top of government with the kind of heft to tell the unions to back off, they can see that these are commitments the government is making, financial commitments, that they're not going to be able to get out of. And that's why markets are concerned. Now, the way to fix this problem isn't necessarily to absolutely strip back government spending, have a kind of scorched earth policy, because in a democracy, you can't do that. The way to get out of this problem is to grow, make the economy bigger so the economy can stand and raise taxes and pay debt service payments on that much, much bigger stock of debt that we're now trying to deal with. But when you're raising taxes at the same time and then doing really stupid things in your employment bill to make it more expensive for employers who are trying to recover post-COVID, who you're whacking employer national insurance increases on, you then make it even more difficult for them to take people on, even more expensive with all these extra conditions and, sick leave and maternity benefit from day one and all the rest of it. All very nice if you're at a dinner party in North London, but it doesn't work if you're trying to run a small business in the Midlands or the Northwest of England. And I'm afraid it's those small and medium-sized enterprises which Labour don't understand. There's no one at the top of government who's been anywhere near creating a small and medium-sized enterprise, Mike. These are the people who get up every morning and make the economy work. These SMEs, many of them will be listening to Talk Radio. Many people will be nodding from the waist listening to what I'm saying here. These SMEs, they employ 2/3 of people. They create 50% of growth in this country. They are being mullered at the moment. Business rates are going up, national insurance contributions are going up, the minimum wage is going up by 7%, by 16% if you're trying to employ young people, many of whom desperately need a start. The difference between Keir Starmer, Mike, we're old enough to remember New Labour, right? When Tony Blair came in, I was a political correspondent at the FT. My job was to really get to know the front bench of the Labour Party in both opposition and then in government. Yes, they had Gordon Brown, who was very statist in his ideology. He is Rachel Reeves' political hero. She literally had a poster of him up on the wall in her room at university. But they also had Tony Blair, who does get economics instinctively, and Blair was powerful enough that in the room, when big decisions were made by New Labour, by Blair's government, who came in, by the way, with national debt at 35% of GDP rather than 100% of GDP. They had a much, much better economic inheritance. But there were people in the room when New Labour made those decisions who really understood financial markets. People who are still knocking around, like Gavin Davis, who's partner of Goldman Sachs at the time. People who are now past, like Derek Scott, who was a big city economist too. They were allowed in the room and they were grown-ups, and they would say, you couldn't do that, but the markets will tank if you do that. There's no one in the room at the top of New Labour who really understands financial markets. And guess what? Financial markets know that. They know that. And that's why they're worried.
And so do you think that then the word of recession, which is looming larger and larger with every day that passes, is actually coming then? Will we be, do you think, in a recession soon?
So a recession is when you get 2 consecutive quarters, that's 2 consecutive 3-month periods of negative economic growth, so the economy contracting. I just gave you the numbers for the last 3 months, that's September, October and November, Mike. Minus 0.1, minus 0.1, plus 0.1. So the economy is basically flatlining. I got to be responsible about this. I'm an economic commentator. I don't want to be seen to be talking down the UK economy. And like you, maybe because we're from similar backgrounds, I have enormous respect and faith in British entrepreneurial spirit, the ability of our companies to dust themselves down, to find a way to keep themselves going, employing people and all the rest of it. So there are some good things going on in the UK economy. And some of what Labour's talking about is the right thing to be talking about, easing up planning restrictions, getting infrastructure projects going and so on. Though that takes a great deal of time. But I do worry, and more importantly, financial markets worry that growth, where's it going to come from, Mike? These tax rises I'm talking about, they haven't even come in yet. Coming in April. The national insurance increase on employers is coming in April. The minimum wage rise is coming in April. And already you're seeing consumer indices of confidence, business indices of confidence at very, very low levels. So I don't want to talk the UK economy down. On the contrary, I want the government to do well. I want our country to do well. I know in my bones that when people like me talk about these highfalutin numbers, there are real people behind these reductions in growth. You know, families breaking up, dreams being crushed, people being laid off, genuine human suffering. But, Mike, I don't know where the growth is going to come from. You are increasing the burden on business to this extent because you want to give your mates in the public sector unions massive pay rises, because you want to do net zero policies that, quite frankly, are now mad. As somebody that wants to see us use less fossil fuels, the way Labour's going about it in such a doctrinaire way, following on from the Tories, by the way, much of the political class doesn't understand this stuff. I don't know where the growth is going to come from, even though I desperately want to see growth. But I do know historically, when the tax burden is at a 70-year high, which is where it was at when the Tories went out of office. Yeah, thanks very much for that, lads. And then you put the tax burden up even more, can only stymie growth.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Great to talk to you, Liam. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you. Liam Halligan, Telegraph columnist. A pretty damning indictment, I would say, from him of what is going on. Rachel Reeves will speak today about how she's going to try and manage growth and how she's going to try and create growth. I don't think she's going to be able to convince you or me or anybody else, for that matter, because it certainly seems to me that this government has put more burdens on the people, more burdens on companies, more burdens coming in April on the people that keep this country going. You're looking there at the farm protest, which is going to be going on up in Oxford, where Rachel Reeves is going to be speaking. And, you know, nothing looks particularly great, does it?